Hello guys, welcome back to MedMadi. Today we are going to discuss an interesting topic which is ECG. Here we will discuss the basics of ECG and its analysis. For getting a better view, we will have a look on the circulation of blood, the main vessels, and finally the conducting system of the heart. This video do contain a lot of basic information, so I hope you guys will watch till the end. So first we will look the blood circulation. Before knowing blood circulation, we have to know the heart. So here is a rough structure of heart. The heart do contain 4 chambers, 2 atrium and 2 ventricle. So we can see the heart like left side and right side, and all the time the left side contains pure blood or the oxygenated blood, and the right side always contains impure blood or the deoxygenated blood. So let's tell the circulation. So the circulation starts from the left ventricle. In the left ventricle there is pure blood. So the aorta takes this pure blood to the all part of the body, and it become deoxygenated, and the deoxygenated blood come back to the right atrium through the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava takes blood from the upper part of the body, and the inferior part of the body, the blood is taken from by the inferior vena cava. So the blood reaches the right atrium, and this blood is deoxygenated, and this blood reaches to the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle pulmonary artery takes the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and in the lungs the deoxygenated blood become oxygenated, and the oxygenated blood reaches the left atrium and it fills the left ventricle, and the cycle again continues. So we can see that the atrium and ventricle are open or connected by an orifice, and this orifice is called as atrioventricular orifice, and there is another opening in the ventricle, it is the pulmonary orifice, and we can see that these orifices were guarded by walls. And what is the function of the wall? This wall will prevent the backward flow of the blood. Like this wall in the right side, it is known as the tricuspid wall, and this tricuspid wall prevent the backward flow of blood to the right atrium, and here the semilunar wall, otherwise pulmonary wall, prevents the backward flow of the blood from pulmonary artery to ventricle. So this cycle have to be done. After this atrium will be filled with blood, this blood have to be reached on the ventricle, and for that this atrium will contract, and the contraction of atrium is called as systole, and the blood reaches to the ventricle. After the contraction the atria relaxes, and we call it as diastole. After blood reaches the ventricle contracts in order to make the blood to flow through this pulmonary artery. If it is in the left case, we can tell us the aorta, like the artery is filled with the pure blood, and the atrium contracts, and the blood comes to the ventricle, and the ventricle contracts, and the blood goes through the aorta. So the contraction of atrium is known as atrial systole, and the contraction of ventricle is known as ventricular systole, and the relaxation is known as diastole. Here our main topic is ECG. ECG means electrocardiogram, means it is the graph which shows the electrical activity of the heart. For knowing that, we know that heart is a muscular organ, but it is a special muscular organ. It do have some speciality than other muscles. Let's see the property of heart muscles. Heart muscles, we can call it as cardiac myocytes. So it do have some special properties. Like other muscles, it can contract, and we can call it as contractibility. You know the sliding filament theory? Like it is the ability to contract, like actin and myosin, the sarcomere unit and all. I will do another video separately. Like all other muscle, the heart muscle do also have the ability to contract, and it also have the ability to excite. So the property is called as excitability, the ability to generate action potential. And if these cells were excited, it also have the capacity or the ability to conduct the impulses, and we can call it as conductibility. Like through the gap junction, the muscle conducts the impulse. The special feature of heart is nothing else the automatism, the ability of heart to make intrinsical impulses without any external stimulus. Till now, during this time also my heart is beating, but I don't know when it is beating and all, like it is involuntary, but our heart itself controls its activity. So for that we will have the look on the conducting system of heart. Before only, heart is made up of cardiac myocyte. There is mainly two types of cardiac myocyte: typical cardiac myocytes and atypical myocytes. And typical myocytes have all the properties, the contractibility, excitability and conductibility. But our atypical myocytes, which make the conducting system of the heart, has an additional property which is called as the automatism. It has the ability to generate their own impulses. Like the conducting system of the heart, the parts of the conducting system of the heart are the SA node, otherwise known as the pacemaker of the heart, the AV node, otherwise known as the latent pacemaker, the bundle of His, and the left and right bundle, and at last the Purkinje fibers. So we will start from the SA node. SA node situated on the right atrium just below to the superior vena cava. So the action potential is produced in the SA node, and this action potential have to be transmitted to all part of the heart. For that both typical and atypical cells work. Like we know that the typical cells have the property of excitability and conductibility. So it excite and it conduct, but very slowly. So we need a faster way. For that we have the Bachmann's bundle and the internodal tract. Bachmann's bundle make the impulse transmit to the left atrium. At the same time, the internodal tract makes the impulse transmit to the AV node. So we all know about the excitable tissues like neuron. It have the property of excitability and conductibility, but it doesn't have a property of contractibility. But our typical myocyte have all these three properties. So let's have a look on the graph. Here we can see this is the graph of the action potential created by the typical myocytes, and we know that here the calcium also involved in creating this action potential, and we also know that the calcium will help in contracting of the striated muscle. So we just can tell, like in this part of the graph here occurs the contraction of the muscle. So after creating the action potential, the calcium enters into the cell, and this calcium makes the muscle to contract. So in between only the contraction of muscle happens, and this this absolute refractive period is very helpful for the muscle to have a rest also. AV node is present on the lower side of the right atrium near to the interventricular septum, and this AV node transmit the impulse to all part of the ventricle. Like we can see the bundle of His, the left and right grooves, and at last the Purkinje fibers which reaches to all part of the wall of the ventricle. And we know that if the impulses reaches, then the wall will contract. So the atrium will contract, at the same time the ventricle will contract. But just think, from atrium the blood is coming this direction, and from if the ventricle is also contracting, then blood has a flow tendency to flow back to the atrium. So there should be some delay. For that delay, the AV node is present. Like the bundles or the fibers in the AV node has a larger diameter and a lot of branches. So the contraction of the ventricle occurs after 0.1 second after the a contraction of the atrium. Like SA node create the impulses, it reaches to AV node, but it get delayed here. But that time the atrial contraction starts, and after 0.1 second the ventricular contraction starts. So it helps for the rhythmic contraction. So this AV node delay is very helpful for that. And I told that SA node is known as the pacemaker of the heart, and it has the ability to start their own impulses. So we can express this graphically, just a graph without any representation. Okay, like it has a local depolarization, a depolarization, repolarization, and again local depolarization. But here one thing is absent from other cells like neurons. Here hyperpolarization is absent, and if it started to make action potential, it is continuing like this. So it is the property of the SA node, like the property of automatism. And we know that if the SA node get damaged, the AV node has the ability to make their own impulse and make the heart contract. Okay, if the SA node doesn't work, then the AV node will work. If the AV node is not working, then his bundle of His will work, and if the bundle of His stops working, then our cruise, then at last our Purkinje fibers. So all the conducting system has the ability of automatism. Okay, we reached our ECG. ECG means electrocardiogram. Electrocardiogram means it shows, the graph shows the electrical activity of the heart. It shows the potential difference between the various parts of the heart, and the method is known as electrocardiography. Don't just get confused. Electrocardiogram is the graph, like this is electrocardiogram, and the method is known as electrocardiography. And this is our ECG. Okay, and it do consist waves, segments, and intervals. So here we can see a straight line, and this line is called as the isoelectric line. I'll write isoelectric line. This line which doesn't have any charges, like neutral. And here we can see some waves. Here it is P, Q, R, S, and T. Some wave deflect upwards and some wave deflects downwards. So these waves are positive and these waves are negative. I repeat, this is the isoelectric line and these are the waves. The positive waves are P, R, and T, and the negative waves are Q and S. So how do we take ECG? For taking ECG, we should need some electrodes. There is two types of electrode, chest lead and the standard leads. Now I will tell about the standard leads. First, there is mainly 4 standard leads. On the right arm, one electrode should be placed. On the left arm, one electrode should be placed. And on the left foot, one electrode should be placed. And also on the right foot, we have to place an electrode. But we can see there is a triangle, only 3 sides. Because the right foot, here the electrode is neutral. Like these electrode create an electric field around this human body. Like just think, a big ball and a human is standing inside the ball. Like that only the electric field is created all around his body. So we know that heart is working. It has some electrical dipole. So if the dipole is on the same direction of the electric field created by this, then it shows a positive deflection like this. And if it is against, then it shows a negative deflections like this. And if it is not against or same way, like if this is the electric field and the dipole created by the heart is like this, then it has no components on this side. So it shows isoelectric line. So you may go to know like how it is formed. And the electrodes had particular color. In the right arm, the electrode is red in color, and left it is yellow in color, and on the left foot it is green in color. And when we see that this lead is called as the first lead and this lead is called as the second lead, at the same time this last one is known as the third lead. and we can see that this second lead is so much near to the heart, which implies that this lead is more accurate. So the second lead is known as the main lead, and we use this second lead for studying and also in the diagnosis purposes. So we will discuss the parts of ECG. I told before only it have components like waves, segments and intervals. Before that, we have to know the cardiac cycle. One cardiac cycle means one systole and one diastole. Systole is the contraction and diastole is the relaxation. Like it consists like one cardiac cycle is 0.8 second. Like we have 75 beats. Just think normal 75 beats for 60 seconds. Then one beat is for 0.8 second. Like that, I just created a schematic representation. At the 0.1 second, the atrium contracts, and after that, the ventricle contracts. So this is atrial systole, and this one is the ventricular systole. We can see that it starts from here and ends till here. So 1, 2, 3 and 0.3. So atrial systole is like 0.1 second, and ventricular systole is like 0.33 second, and we can see here the ventricular diastole. Ventricular diastole is like 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is also 1, 4 and 7, like 0.47. And when we tell about the atrial diastole or atrial relaxation, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So atrial diastole is 0.7. Like when we sum the atrial systole and atrial systole, it is 8, like 1 plus 7. And the ventricular systole plus ventricular diastole, it is also 0.8 second. But when we see, we can see that at this particular time, the whole heart is relaxing, and the time of that whole heart relaxing is 1, 2, 3 and 0.7. Like we can tell the time of whole heart relaxing, like heart diastole. Here diastole is 0.37 seconds. And so you got to know about the atrial systole and ventricular diastole. And here we have the waves, and these waves do implies the systole and diastole of the various part of the heart. Like the P wave. So which are the waves? P, Q, R, S and T. Like the P wave implies the atrial depolarization. Like atrial depolarization. Why it is depolarization, not systole I am telling, not contraction I am telling. Why I am using depolarization? Because this ECG shows the electrical activity, not the mechanical activity. This is the work of the muscle, but we are going to tell about the electrical activity. So it is depolarization or otherwise repolarization. Here the P wave implies the atrial depolarization. This Q wave, which is negative, it implies the depolarization of the ventricular septum. And here the R wave implies the depolarization of the ventricle, and here the S wave implies the depolarization of the base of the ventricle. So all in total we can tell the QRS complex, it altogether implies the ventricular depolarization. And here we can see another wave. This wave implies the ventricular repolarization. After this depolarization, the ventricle have to be repolarized, and the T wave includes the repolarization. And we can see that the atrial repolarization is absent. It somewhat get like hidden in the QRS complex. So I just told all about the waves, and let's have a look on the segment. What is a segment? Segment is the isoelectric line between two waves. So we can see here P wave and the Q wave. So this isoelectric line between the P and Q wave is the PQ segment. And here we can see another line between S wave and the T wave. And this isoelectric line we can call it as ST segment. We can see another isoelectric line also, like this one and this one. Like if it is continuing, then there is another P wave. So this is the TP segment. So I told three segments, PQ, ST and TP. Most of the time it is like PR. Why it is PR? Because most of the time the Q wave will be absent, very negligible. So we usually used to tell like PR segment. Okay, there is no such difference in that. And let's have a look on the intervals. Intervals means a wave and the isoelectric line. So this is the PQ interval. So the PQ segment have only this isoelectric line, but the PQ interval has the P wave also. So this is the PQ interval. Then this one is the QRS complex, and from here to here it is called like ending of the T wave, it is called the QRST interval. And there is one more interval like between the interval between two waves of R is known as the RR interval, and this RR interval is very important, very clinically very important, RR interval. So I just told all about the ECG. Now we have to analyze. If we get an ECG, the graph, we have to analyze it. So we are going to analyze the ECG. So we get an ECG. Like it consists of a lot of graph like this. Okay, this is just an representation. I just make it big and I just drawn for making you understand. Okay, and if we get an ECG, the first graphs implies the main leads. Okay, I told there is two types of leads, like main standard leads and the chest leads. The chest lead, the graph will come at the end, and the starting graph will be about the standard leads, and on the standard leads we take the second lead because it is the main lead and it is the lead, and the axis of that lead passes near to the heart, so we take the second lead. So here it is the second lead. How to analyze and what are the things we have to analyze? We have to analyze whether our heart is in sinus rhythm, whether our heart is conducting very well, is it conducting well, and is there any problem in regularity, like is there any irregularity, we have to know. So irregularity is called as arrhythmia, like cardiac arrhythmia. Okay, and so let's first check whether this is in sinus rhythm. What is meant by sinus rhythm? Sinus rhythm means the heart will make heartbeats, and that heartbeats we can call it as a rhythm. And if it is in the sinus rhythm, the number of heartbeats will be between 60 to 80, and we can just find it out from the graph only. Like if it is in the sinus rhythm, then the sinoatrial node should work. If the sinoatrial node is working, then it will create the atrial systole, and if the atrium is getting depolarized, then it means the P wave is formed. So the first condition for the sinus rhythm is the presence of P wave, and this P wave have to be positive. Like as usual, it have to be positive. If it is negative, then it is not sinus rhythm. And one more thing, this P wave have to be present in like before this QRS complex. Like if SA node is not working in the heart, if the SA node is not working, then the AV node will work. If SA node is not working, the AV node will work, and the AV node create impulses, and it can also go like here and here also. If the impulse is going here, then the atrium will also contract, like P wave will be formed. But what is the problem? Like it will be after or in between the QRS complex. So the conditions for sinus rhythm means our sinoatrial node is working very well. The conditions are the P wave must be positive and it should be before the QRS complex. So from the graph only we can tell whether it is sinus rhythm or not. Like we can see there is a P wave and it is before the QRS complex. Here also there is a P wave and it is before the QRS complex. And we have to know the heartbeat. If the heartbeat is between 60 and 80, then we can tell that this is sinus rhythm. For that we have to know about this graph. Like when we take one part, let me take this part. Okay, this length, this distance is 1 mm. Okay, distance is 1 mm, and in the upside only it will be written like velocity, time of taken and all. If the most of the graph, the velocity will be 50 millimeter per second. So I am taking this as this as the velocity. So the velocity is 50 mm per second, and we know that velocity is distance by time. So the time have to be 1 by 50, which is equal to 0.02 second. What is this time? This time is the time for 1 mm. Like this is the time of a small box. So the time of a small box is 0.02 second. Then we can tell what is the time of the big box. The time of the big box will be 0.02 into 5, because one big box consists of 5 small boxes. So 0.02 into 5, which we can tell 0.1 second. So one big box means 0.1 second. So we know that this is the R wave and the R wave. I told before we should know about the RR interval. It is of very much importance. Like one RR interval means one cardiac cycle. Like here it is the R, full R, then S, then Q, then T, then P, which implies the full R, full cardiac cycle is present here. So if this is one cardiac cycle, and if we are taking the time for this RR interval, the time for one RR interval will be equal to time for one cardiac cycle. So how we can calculate it? We know that we can count it. Between this R and R wave, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 big box. 7 big box means for one big box it is 0.1 second, I told. So 7 into 0.1 plus, then how many small box we can see? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is also a big box, but I am telling like 5 into small box is 0.02 for your understanding. Okay, so it is just easy. We have to count the big box first. Otherwise, okay, let's count the big box first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 big box means 7 into 1 big box is 0.1 second. So 7 into 0.1 plus how many small box? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 into the time for one small box is 0.2 second. Okay, for one small box is 0.02 second. So it is 5 into 0.02 second. And how it will be? So we got our calculation like 0.7 plus 0.1 would give the 0.8 second. And I just want to tell one more thing, like everyone misunderstood. We don't want to count all this box. We just want to count like between the tip of 2R. Only this line we have to count. No need of counting all these boxes. We just want the distance, and from the distance we can count the time. We can find the time because we have the velocity. Okay, don't get misunderstood. Okay, we got 0.8 second. This is the time for one cardiac cycle, that is one RR interval. So this is the time for one cardiac cycle, which means for how many cardiac cycle we will have? Like we know 1 minute is 60 seconds, and for one cardiac cycle it is 0.8 second. So 60 by 0.8 will give the number of heartbeats. So 60 by 0.8 will be 75. So just check whether the 75 is sinus rhythm or not. We know that sinus rhythm is between 60 to 80, and we got 75, which is in between this value. So our heart is perfect. Like our heart has the sinus rhythm, and the other two conditions, they're like the good doctors, they don't want to count and calculate the heartbeats. from the graph only they can find out. Like if the P wave is present and it is positive, and if it is before the QRS complex, then this heart is in sinus rhythm. And I told not only conduction we have to, not only the sinus rhythm we have to analyze. The second analysis is about the conduction. Like just think, if this is the the depolarization of atrium, and this is the depolarization of the ventricular septum. Like here is the AV node, here is the SA node. Then what is this? This is the conducting pathway, the internodal pathway. So we have to find whether the conduction is well. For that we have some values, like some limit. The PQ interval should be in between 0.1 to 0.18 second. Like QRS should be 0.08 second. QRS means, like we can see here. Let's count the box in the QRS. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 small boxes. 4 small boxes means 4 into 0.02 seconds. So 0.08 second. So this is normal. We can see QRS complex. We have the normal QRS complex. Why we took 0.02? Because it is the time of the smallest box. Okay, don't get confused. And okay, like that only we can find the PQ interval. I'm not going that well. Just thinking or like checking all the main things. Okay, we check the sinus rhythm. We check the conducting. If it is between this value, then the conduction is perfect. And we have to know whether it is regular or irregular. Like this is a small graph, but I am just telling, just think, like I am drawing a graph. Okay, the T wave, the P, the Q, the T, and again the P, the Q, R. And like if we can see, this is one cardiac cycle, and this is also the other cardiac cycle. And when we see here only, the distance between or the RR interval in the two cases are different. The first RR interval is much bigger than the small. So it is not regular. Like this is first heartbeat and this is the second heartbeat. And the second heartbeat is much faster than the first one, or the time is very less for the second heartbeat. So the RR intervals are not same. Then we can tell the heart is not regular, that it is irregular. We can tell irregular only when the change is greater than 10%. Okay, like if it is 40 mm the distance and the 10% is 4. If it is 36, like the first one is 40 and the second one is 36, then it's fine. Like it is less than 10%, then it's fine. If it is 33, it is greater than the 10%, because 10% of 40 is 4 only. And if it is greater than that 10%, then it is problem. So the irregularity of heart, we call it as arrhythmia, cardiac arrhythmia. And two more things I have to tell. If the heartbeat is, the normal heartbeat is 60 to 80, and if it is more than 80, we can tell it as tachycardia. And if it is less than 60, we can tell as bradycardia. Cardia is heart, and brady means slow, and tachy means fast. If it is greater than 80, it is tachycardia. If it is lesser than 60, it is bradycardia. And this tachycardia can be normal physiological. Like if we are doing some exercise, and if we are running, and if we are having some stress, then we can have increased the heart rate. It is physiological. It can be pathological. If it is pathological, we should do curing. So this is all about ECG, heart, everything. So this video contains so many basic things. So just watch all the contents and don't miss to watch each and every point. And please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.